Hello and welcome to Builders. Today, we're thrilled to have Nima Salami, CEO and co-founder of OASYS NOW, a Netherlands-based health tech startup that's revolutionizing how patient data is used in clinical trials. OASYS NOW has developed cutting-edge, patient-centric, privacy-first platforms, including their latest product, Eligible, which simplifies trial eligibility while ensuring data security. Nima will also share insights on OASYS NOW's collaborations with giants like NVIDIA, Google, and Erasmus Medical Center in the area of genomic data privacy. Nima, a warm welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. Excited to be here.
Lovely to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's start, shall we, by talking a little bit about your earlier career and then kind of building up to the founding of OASYS NOW. So, before founding OASYS NOW, I believe you've accumulated over a decade of experience in leadership roles, particularly in kind of business development, also tech management, right? Could you tell us a little bit about those early career experiences and how they've influenced you in your current role?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. So it's been quite a whole plethora of things. I mean, I was always fascinated by becoming an entrepreneur in the tech world, for I don't know, maybe like the past 10 years, and it arose from that sort of personal mission that I had that I wanted to build, but I knew I don't know much about it. I didn't know much business or entrepreneurship in general, where to start, and I knew I have an idea, but I didn't know where to get started. So I just tried to sort of join other startups and sort of learn on the ground from those who are a few steps ahead of me. So I was part of a few startups, but my sort of career life started way way earlier. Probably like many people, first working at restaurants or something. So that was like when I was already like I think 18 years old. But that was a very interesting experience because I worked at the largest. It's completely off topic, but I think it's relevant. I worked at the largest restaurant in Malaysia, which we had 200 plus employees and more than 1,000 visitors a day. Like 8 kitchens, so it was like quite a thing. So I started first as a waiter, then like a floor captain, then I became the public relations executive, like as just like a super young person, like 18 something years old. So that taught me a lot and made me embrace more and more public relations. That's something that I like, communicating with people. So that sort of stuck with me as well from the very get go. But later on, also next to the university, I did a few sort of projects like in a consulting firm, web dev, etc. But one of the sort of most memorable experiences for me was working for a year at the university itself as the member of the university council. That was also a lot of management experience. So sort of I try to bring those and some of my technical experience into then building OASYS NOW.
Fantastic. Was there a lot of kind of mentoring when you were in that kind of university role as well, I assume?
Yeah, indeed. That's sort of what I was seeking actively, right? I would reach out both to individuals that I wanted to mentor me, but also sort of trying to pick positions where I know someone who I'm on daily contact with and can teach me a thing or two.
Yeah. Well, by the sounds of it, kind of, moving up the levels, you could say, in that restaurant business as well, kind of, and such a number of employees as well. As, you've learned a lot or kind of experienced a lot when it comes to scaling businesses, right? But you've also worked outside the healthcare sector. Obviously, OASYS NOW is it's a health tech company, but you've also worked outside that sector. So how have these kind of cross industry insights helped kind of shape how your approach basically to how you've built OASYS NOW, how you manage it today?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. So I'm also personally passionate about consumer-facing products and the whole human-computer interaction. That's been one of my interests. And obviously AI as well. So before OASYS NOW was also part of Waiver, is a startup which first at the time was mostly focusing on conversational AI. This is before ChatGPT era. How do we make how do we converse with people? But if you're a robot, so to say. So that was also quite a useful experience to want to think about how do you interact with users that feels the most natural, like human-like, knowing that it's a robot. So we are trying to sort of bring those experiences into building what we build today as well, because although we are sort of B2B, right, we build products for businesses, but it's always about patients and around
Yeah.
patients. So
Yeah.
we also have a patient-facing app. That's sort of how we combine these
Got you.
kind of experiences.
Well, fantastic, and we'll get a little bit more into the kind of nitty gritty of the products and everything that you've been that you're building and what's gone into them. But just a little bit first on the company itself. How when did you found the company? When was it started? How many people are there working in the company today?
Yeah, so the company is registered in March 2021, but I've been working on it for a bit longer than that. I started first when I was in the second year of my studies at computer science.
Mm-hmm.
That's like 2000, I think, 18, something along those lines. It was, as I mentioned, mostly like I knew what I want to build, but how to build it from business point of view, etc. All the other
Right.
aspects I was missing. So, but I
Mm-hmm.
was coming to a place like this where I am, which is a startup incubator called Yes Delft. Taking entrepreneurship courses and startup programs, etc.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Going to competitions and sort of daring to pitch and get rejected.
Mm.
Get attacked by
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
the
All those
jury. It's
harsh
been very
learnings, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of exposing your idea and sort of daring to receive feedback, and I think that's been very, very useful for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that really opened up my eyes into the whole world behind the scene and how much policy and regulatory environment affect how products come to market, especially in highly regulated markets like
Yeah.
healthcare.
Yep. Yep.
But really, I knew that it's sort of something I want to go do it full time. Already, sort of in 2021, as I was trying to finish my studies, I was like, I'm gonna register this, and then try to get some subsidies, and then I had to register the company. But full time, actually, I've been doing it for a year and a half, and
Okay.
currently we are with 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's my co-founder and I, Sarah Okaze. She has a nanobiology background, so she's mostly into DNA genomics, but she's
Right.
also specializing in cryptography, so the whole genetic
Mm-hmm.
privacy. That's basically where it comes into play. I know
Got
Sarah
you.
for 5 years, and then we have 2 more engineers who are my former classmates.
Mm.
So I know them for already 8 years. Super top talented engineers, full stack, etc. So that's sort of the core team. And then recently we are
Right.
joined with another person from legal, so a
Okay.
lawyer, and then someone from the clinical trial board. That's sort of the 6 people, the core team.
Yeah. So you've gone with legal in-house, naturally being in the industry you're in, the kind of product that you're building as well, and it doesn't surprise me.
Indeed, like it was a no-brainer, like as in like we have delved ourselves so much into all the regulatory paperwork,
Mm.
but at some point, if you don't have the education for it, you can only get so far, right?
Right. Yep.
So having someone in team has really sped up our growth in that regard as well.
Yeah, I can imagine you can only get so far, but they get to a point where you start guessing a little bit, right? And you're like, oh, actually, now's the time to get someone in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but super. So yeah, fairly young or fairly kind of early on in your journey, one could say,
For
right?
sure.
But let's talk about the company's vision, about the products as well. Now, OASYS Now. Tell me first the name. Where does the name come from? We see it kind of it's OASYS Now. Tell us a little bit about the name before we go into the kind
Yeah,
of
I mean,
vision.
so that's a good question. So Oasis, if spelled correctly with an I, right? It's about this beautiful, luscious place with water in the middle of desert, right?
Right.
So it's someone that you can take comfort, that you can rest, and
Mm-hmm.
you can go back to the world, the tough, harsh world, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to build that in the digital infrastructure of healthcare. We really felt like, if I may say so, it's quite a desert land.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most left behind companies when it comes to technological adoption.
Yep.
So we want to bring an Oasis there, and we want to bring it now as soon as
Mm-hmm.
possible. So
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of where the name comes from.
Super, very very interesting, and the company is aiming to, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're aiming to kind of empower patients, right, to take control of their health data. So you're taking a kind of patient-centered approach, which I mentioned earlier on. What was the kind of aha moment for you? What was it that kind of prompted you or convinced you to found the company with your co-founder and everything?
Yeah, definitely. So, it was a personal story and journey of both my co-founder and I. that we looked at the same problem from two different point of view. For me, it was from the patient's point of view. For Sarah, was from the researcher's point of view. And it's
Got you.
always about the data, right? So where the
Yeah.
data is, how it gets used. So what really basically got me passionate about this, and I knew that I want to do this at some point in my life, and preferably sooner rather than later, was I wanted to build a solution for my mom, actually. So she is a chronic disease patient
Okay.
that has been using a medication, since she was a child. But so I'm originally from Iran. I came to Netherlands 10 years ago. But before Netherlands, we also lived in Malaysia, and places. We are refugees, actually, right? So as refugees, we have traveled from country to country a lot.
Right.
And for my mom, this was the even more devastating experience, because in a new country, she didn't have access to her own medications, because she didn't have her health data, to show the diagnosis.
Right.
She had to get re-diagnosed again. And I saw what she went through before she had her medicine. So that sort of, clearly bothered me to see what she went through. So I wanted to build, and I was like, why do we not have access to our own health data, right? Like this is, early Facebook time. I was like, all of our data is on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Everything else is there.
Everything is one of the most vital information that we want. We don't have access to it. So I wanted to find out why that's not the case, and if not, then I'm going to build it myself. And along the way, I found out that this is not a problem only for the patients, not only for my mom as a refugee, but most people don't have access to their data. And as a cybersecurity nerd myself, I was always passionate about how to make this data repurposable in a secure and safe manner. And along the way, I met my co-founder, Sarah, who has been a researcher at Erasmus Medical Center, working on genetic data sets, trying to find out the solution to Alzheimer's, for example, right? What causes Alzheimer's? How do we prevent it? And having to wait to get access to data for months, researchers at that lab for years, right? They have the ideas. They want to go on researching. They just don't have the data. While the data is available sitting somewhere else, but the whole governance around it, etc., is a mess, right? So when we met, we were like, okay, cool, right? Like both of us care about this. Let's go build it together. Like this, the world needs this. That's sort of how we got into doing it now full time.
Really, really nice. Nice to hear that kind of, there's that personal experience or that connection that you have here. And I think talking a little bit about, we're going to look a little bit at your kind of the product portfolio. I think there are a few different products that you're working on and everything. But what about the kind of overarching, strategy here? You've been talking obviously about, patients' data and everything, and the kind of data security and data handling governance that comes with that. If you were to kind of, paint the picture of, what OASYS now is with these kind of different products in your portfolio, how would you kind of, how would you pitch the company? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. So maybe putting in one sentence with a lot of jargons. So disclaimer, we are building the data governance platform for repurposing of healthcare data in healthcare and life science research. So what that basically means is that we know there's a lot of data. It's already, historically, and there's going to be a lot more in the future. And in most cases, when the data is produced at some point, it remains there. But there are two issues with that. One, the person who that data originally belongs to, being the patients, don't have control overview on it. We want to empower them with that. So it's a patient empowerment, patient data ownership. But also what this unlocks, right, it's a whole list of business models and things that can improve precision medicine, right? So our mission statement is making personalized medicine accessible for everyone globally, right? So personalized medicine, as maybe some people may know, is the whole idea of, instead of I getting a medicine that was tested on a specific group of people, during clinical trial back then, how much does this medicine fit me, right? And the truth is, most of these clinical trials are historically run on male, they're Caucasian, right? So white male. And far majority of the population of the world are not white male. Right? So how do we go about diversifying the type of data sets and the patient that this medicine is tested on, and how do we make it more and more personalized, a precision medicine per person? So this exists for some people. It's quite a very expensive thing to have your medicine personalized to you at the moment. And we want to democratize that. And the way to
Got you.
democratize it is by making this data accessible. And the way to make this data accessible is by empowering patients so that they decide where data can be used. So it's a very multi-layered approach. But to think about it is that there's a lot of patients who own data, and there's a lot of users of that data. And we want to be this governance layer in between that does
Got you.
consent management and provide access to data and vice versa, access to patients. Yeah.
Got you. So those are the kind of the upper layer. They're not kind of misusing it or kind of, using it without consent, essentially. So yeah, I mean, it's fair to say data is kind of transforming or has been transforming healthcare, still is. It's enabling these kind of, you talked about it, personalized treatments and everything, even this AI-driven insights, right, into kind of results. But you've got a number of different products in the portfolio. I think GRIP or GRIP is one of them. One of the kind of key solutions, right? And you spoke about clinical trials, and this is around kind of clinical trial recruitment, right?
That's right. Yeah. Well, the app itself is larger than the clinical trial. That's the first use case for it.
Got you. And how does this give us an overview, basically, of GRIP as a product? How does it kind of address these challenges that have traditionally, been a problem or hindered patient recruitment?
Indeed, yeah. So we're at the moment working on 3 products. One of them being GRIP. GRIP was the first product that we launched last December. It's the patient interface, the patient-facing part of everything that we do, right? So as I mentioned, we do a lot of technical behind-the-scene things. But the reason we do that, we want to bring them to the patient. We want it to be at the service of them. So the idea behind GRIP is for eventually, right, this is the larger vision, for everyone to have access to all of their health data in one place and receive personalized experience in that place. Right? So if you think about Spotify or Netflix of a kind, right, they already from your data know what you need. We want to bring that experience, personalized experience to the patients. But this is like a really big, broad problem, right? So you don't start really big. You start with one specific problem, one niche group. So currently we're focusing on patients with rare diseases, chronic diseases, who currently don't have access to any medications because there's no medication for them, or the existing ones doesn't fit them. But there are new ones coming out, every other day, basically. But they have no way of staying informed about it. Neither do their doctors, right? The doctors are also busy with hundreds of patients, and the doctors don't have time, to be honest, up to date with every scientific paper that comes out every day either, right? So the goal behind this platform is to notify and inform the patients and their healthcare professionals who are helping them if there is a new medication coming available, and they could come in forms of clinical trials, or maybe they're available on the market. So that's sort of the starting point for GRIP, to bring a personalized experience to healthcare to patients and give them access to the latest medicine.
Got you. So not just the patients then either. It's also like you said, their kind of healthcare professionals as well. They also have that kind of access to the data for their patients, or what's becoming available, essentially.
Indeed, yes. So it's a platform. It's essentially more and more becoming a platform that brings a few key stakeholders to interact with each other, right? It's something that doesn't exist today, so I can't bring an example. But if I had to extremely simplify it, right, it is a marketplace. Whereas, for example, Airbnb on one side, some people are hosting the the houses, and some other people, right? You know what I mean? So this is the other way around, but in the field of healthcare.
Yeah. And it's a good way of, not that it's a like for like comparison, of course, but as you mentioned, kind of Spotify, Netflix, and all these kind of algorithms that are behind suggesting stuff, right? It's the same kind of
it's the recommender system, to put it in technical terms.
Exactly. Super interesting. And you mentioned a few products. What about the other kind of the other solutions? I believe one of the solutions is publicly available at the moment, and the other 2 are in development. Talk to us about these. Maybe give us a kind of high-level overview of each of these products and what they aim to achieve.
Definitely. Yeah. So staying in theme of clinical trials, basically, and connecting patients to the ones that become available, you can approach this from two way, and we want to do both, right? So one is from patient to trial, one is from trial to patients.
Got you.
Right. So the GRIP is from patients to trial. The healthcare data is there find clinical trials for them.
Mm-hmm.
The other way around is if you think about it for a hospital that have hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of patients
Mm-hmm.
on day-to-day basis for the clinical trials that is running at their site, a lot of people are tasked with a manual laborious work of scrolling through patient profiles one by one to see if they're matched with a trial that they are running, right? So it's almost up to the point that it's ridiculous because it could take 2, 3. We have heard of the case of 10 hours per patient that you're looking into their profile.
Wow. Yep.
And you have to go through hundreds of them, right, to see which one is fit. So basically what's happening is that the trial is ready, the medicine is available, everybody's ready to start the procedure, but now we have to find the patients. And that process can take 13, sometimes 18 months. The patients are there. It takes 18 months to find them, right? Because that's so basically what we do, the same technology that we have for the patient, we also have it for these trial sites, for these hospitals, whereby we can take their unstructured electronic health records, unstructured. Why? Because it's not into an Excel sheet, clear, clean table. It's a lot of notes that a doctor has written, right? It has, it comes in so many different forms. It comes in PDF, it comes in, pathology reports, lab reports, DNA reports. So we take all of that information, we can structure it in a way that an algorithm, an AI can make sense of it and do the matching. So we can tell them, hey, for this trial, there's 100 patients that you have that are matched, and this is what precision matching accuracy. So we are aiming for a 90% matching accuracy for the list that we provide to the healthcare organization. And that product is called Eligible, or I like to pronounce it Eligible. My co-founder will pronounce it as Eligible.
Eligible is because of the use of AI, right? So
indeed,
it's kind of the AI in the middle of the word. Yeah,
a wordplay, putting AI in the word eligible. Yeah,
nice. And go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, we've been working on this for a while. We have finally deployed it at our first customer a couple of months ago. So the first results are out. Thank you. Yeah. So just yesterday, I was presenting the results to the CEO and to the team, the end user, the marketing director, and they were all extremely happy about it, right? And that gives us a lot of both validation and excitement to continue adding more features and functionalities for them, and also continue growing the user base in other healthcare institutes.
That's fantastic, and really, really nice that you got that first user, by the way. But staying on the topic of this eligible, if I'm going to pronounce it in the way that your co-founder does. I don't want to annoy them here, but what? Obviously, you've shared some exciting updates there, but what is it? Would you say that kind of differentiates eligible in the kind of the realm of health tech and or from other kind of trial eligibility solutions?
Indeed, yeah. So our unique selling point has always been, I think forever will be, among others, our focus on privacy. So as a cybersecurity firm, we build everything from ground up with the idea of in mind, how do we make sure this data can be used without the privacy of individuals being compromised, right? And it's possible. It was more and more difficult in the past. It's becoming more and more possible. And we're one of the pioneers, if I may say so myself, in building technologies, right? Being on the cutting edge of enabling these things. But the challenge is, like, how do you make these solutions, this cutting edge technology, work and function in a way that your end users are used to? So it doesn't have to disrupt their existing processes, right? And that's sort of what we've been challenging with, I would say, for a couple of years. And it's becoming more and more clear now, and it's becoming productized, right? So one of them is what's behind me. We're going to talk about that third product in a second. But to make it a bit more tangible, right? So I talked at a high level, it's all about privacy and compliance, from the regulatory point of view. What you need to think about is that this data is full of sensitive personal information, and you need to de-identify it before feeding it into, AI algorithms that could be wherever or storing in the cloud, etc. So one of our products is called on-prem DID, whereby we can de-identify, anonymize, pseudonymize the data on-premise of the hospital, right? So there's these kind of techniques that we implement that sort of sets us apart from just, let's say, an AI wrapper or someone who just does the analysis. We make sure that it's also compliant.
Fantastic. And you mentioned earlier as well this kind of 99% matching rate. if I'm not mistaken, right? I'm
90
interested.
plus.
90 plus, sorry, yeah, okay. And I'm interested in that as like a success metric. Is that how you look at it? Can you share a little bit of kind of or kind of elaborate on that point? I think it's around, okay, what do you hope to accomplish with this? What's that kind of measurement of success for you?
Yeah, certainly. So this saying that the 90 plus, it means a lot to those who are in the field, because of the fact that the current solutions are at best at 6, 8, 10%
Oh
accuracy.
wow, wow.
In some cases, less than 1%, right? Maybe let me give you an
Yeah.
anecdotal story. A company, think of it similar to us, who they promise they can find eligible patients for a trial, right? We call them patient recruitment companies, traditional ones.
Mm-hmm.
They get assigned with a task of finding 700 eligible patients in a certain region. They get a few $1 million deal for that. They deliver 700 patients that are eligible, and out of that 700, only 2 or 3 get recruited eventually. Only 2 or 3 actually end up getting included into the trial, right? That's like a matching percent of the 0.48% or something,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Like
Yeah.
this is a $1 million project, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
why does it go wrong? Because what they rely on is patient reported information. So what is their technique is that they would, for example, they're basically a marketing company. They put like social media ads, radio ads, etc., ask
Mm-hmm.
people to fill out some form themselves, and then from that patient information, they make a matching. But the truth is, most patients are not fully knowledgeable about all of the medical situation that they're in, all those details. So
Yeah.
going from this approach, you have a very low precision matching score. What we do, it's real world data driven. It's based on electronic health records, the real world
Yep.
data of the
Yep.
patients. And that's sort of how we differ. So that's a 90%. It's one of our metric. We already do more than 90%, right? But some cases it could be lower, etc. Right? It's
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
staying honest and integrity. But the
Mm-hmm.
other metric for us, which is really important, is how fast we can do this, right? So that, as I
Right.
mentioned, if it takes the research nurses at the hospitals 2, 3 hours per patient and a total process of months, 13 months,
Mm.
we speed that up to matters of minutes, right? It's from
Wow.
minutes to months,
Yep.
like
Yep.
a couple of order of magnitudes faster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So those are the 2 metrics by which we claim we can provide services to them.
Fantastic. And you're obviously providing this service to an end user, and I'm a little bit interested into kind of what you can share, how much you want to share regarding kind of how you monetize the product or the products that you're offering in the market.
Yeah, definitely. So, first of all, we build everything with the idea of making it accessible to patients, and accessible
Mm.
also means that they should be able to afford it.
Yep.
And if we were to put any price on that, I don't think many patients would be able to afford it. My mom couldn't have made
Right.
it possible to afford it, right?
Yep.
So it's always
Yep.
free for patients. Then who else is going to pay for this? It could be the healthcare organizations. Think of
Right.
hospitals, but they're also really burdened with really
Mm.
low budgets.
Mm.
So it's also not really fair to make them the eventual paying customer, but they are an important stakeholder that does play a role, and we do save a lot of cost for them. So we
Mm-hmm.
aim to provide this solution to the healthcare organizations for as low cost as possible to get them up
Mm-hmm.
and running. But
Mm-hmm.
what we can help them with is becoming a high performing trial site. High performing means that when they say, I'm going to deliver 100 patients, they can actually deliver 100, not 10, right? Or they
Right.
will be able
Right.
to actually increase that capacity. So if they are growing, if they're becoming more successful, we'll be able to also take a share of that. So we can ask for
Mm-hmm.
maybe a percentage of how
Mm-hmm.
much they get paid for each patient that they can recruit. So that would be
Yep.
sort of a success fee, a performance-based approach to building our product.
Got you. And so this is all, this is all about kind of eligibility and kind of clinical trials, right? I mean, how would specifically, like when it comes to benefiting both patients and kind of healthcare providers, if we see them as a kind of two users here, this is quite a complex kind of area when it comes to eligibility, right? What are the like specific requirements when it comes to clinical trials? I think a separate question I can leave that for the kind of diversity here and kind of or underrepresented groups. But when it comes to how complex this eligibility requirements are, can you dig a little bit deeper there and tell us?
Yeah, definitely. So by nature, they're complex and they're getting more and more complex. That's something to take in mind. So to give a big picture, we and I've been people in the healthcare and life science field have been trying to build medicine for diseases, and so we first go tackle the largest diseases, right?
Right.
From business point of view, of course, that also brings the most revenue, but right, so that's affecting the biggest population. But the truth is, for the most of the large disease cases, we already have some medicine out there. So there's this global trend towards making more and more medicines for rare diseases and more, right? So the more rare it gets, the more complex this eligibility becomes. So that's something to take into account. That's one aspect. The other aspect is indeed, as you mentioned, is about making this solution as representable of the global population as much as possible.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there are a lot of exclusion criteria for that as well, right? So if someone goes to the clinical trials, they have to be relatively healthy, considering they have a certain sickness. So there are a lot of comorbidities that have to be avoided. There are a lot of medicines that they shouldn't be using when they are taking this other medicine because there could be, side effects, etc. So it goes as granular of age, right, sex, what is it called, like what other disease cases that you have. But it would also become as even further granular of what lab values you have. So what is your LDL level, HDL level, right? So the amount of fat in your veins, etc. Right? And it gets more and more particular per disease case. And to find out this information, you need to, as a research nurse, you need to dig in through all of this patient data to find out when they had a talk with this specialist at this other hospital that was sent to me, right? So it's a lot of work of jumping it through file to file, system to system, to find out where you can find out this information from the patients. And sort of we streamline all of that process. We bring all of the data from different places into one interface for them. And we already highlight all of the keywords that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And we present it to them. This is where you can find it, right? So it's very crucial for us to also always have the human in the loop, the doctor in the loop, because this AI is not supposed to be a decision maker, not at all. It's a decision support system.
Right.
So the doctor always still does. Exactly. Yeah. Indeed. So that's sort of the how we try to think about the exact problem that these end users have, and make their life as simpler as possible, so they can have more time to spend with the patient when the patient comes over than sitting behind a screen.
Yeah, makes sense, and I think it's a really interesting kind of the whole product here, really, because you're also, in a sense, what you're doing is you're increasing access to trials, right, for these or more diverse kind of populations. This must benefit, obviously, research outcomes, presumably, and it kind of identifies, I don't know, for want of a kind of better term, I don't know how you'd phrase it, but it's kind of these gaps in, is it called kind of health data equity, or kind of, that everyone has that kind of, equal kind of access and the same rights, essentially, right?
For sure. And this is, been like historically the case, that it has been, or at least it's been claimed, that it's hard to find people from the underrepresented groups who partake in clinical trials. But there have been times and times research that sort of that claim is debunked, right? There are a lot of patients who do want to participate. They're not notified. They're not informed, right? So the access to trial is something that usually comes from the healthcare organizations, instead of coming from the patients. And that's why we have the patient-facing app as well, where those patients who want, they can take proactive approach to saying, hey, I do want to participate. Right. And then that information we can also collect and tell them, hey, there are this group of community who say, I want to be. Right. So this is about collecting all this information of the individuals and groups who want to participate, and make them more visible, make them more prominent.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And again, the kind of ultimate impact on these research outcomes is a super interesting point, I think. You're giving kind of these underrepresented groups a voice as well, which is great. Really, really cool.
I mean, I'm one of them in some ways. I mean, I'm male, but not necessarily European. But that's not only it, right? When we're talking about underrepresented, we're also talking about certain disease cases as well, right? There's a lot of rare diseases that have been ignored, and they're actually not as rare as we think. right? So it's about bringing them to light, and these people are spread all around the world,
Yeah.
and we want to make sure that their voices are also heard. So as part of GRIP, sort of what is it called, like milestones and the journey that they're improving GRIP is building that community platform where rare disease patients can find each other and together form a group and be able to advocate for more research on their disease cases as well, and bring research to where these patients are, and hopefully make sure that more people can find a medicine for their health issues.
It's super interesting. I'd like to talk a little bit also about kind of the data privacy and the security matters at hand. Obviously, you're working in a sector where this is really, really important. Goes without saying. It's highly kind of high governance around this matter. Or could you kind of talk us through how your technology, how the products ensure data security, and again, kind of what sets you apart here?
Yeah, for sure. So data security always is about building layers, right? So unfortunately, we don't have, and I don't think we will ever have, a foolproof guarantee of protecting data forever, right? Because what you need to think about is the more protected, the harder it becomes to make it utilized, right? So it's a lot of times privacy versus utility is a common issue, right?
And this is a fine balance, right?
It's a very fine balance, yeah. So what we do, we think about it from multiple point of views. One is from the patient control point of view, from the privacy aspect, right? Giving them the voice and control to say, fine, use all my data. I don't mind. I really care about the research outcome. Use all of my data. Some people don't want that, right? So it's one about providing options to people. The other aspect about data privacy is that it's about data minimization, right? So a lot of times to do research on topic X, you don't need to know all this other information about the patient. Right. How do you minimize that and do a granular consent where, okay, I want only this part of my data to be visible, right? That's another aspect. The other aspect is, how do you make sure that the sensitive information of the patient can be redacted before the research is being done? That also makes the data set as unbiased as possible, right? So you can remove gender, age, etc., if it's not necessary, right?
Yeah.
But to bring it to the more and more technical level, right? So from the very basics on security, right? Data must be encrypted at storage and in transit, right? So data has to be encrypted at all times. There is an issue though when you want to do the computation. You do need to unencrypt the data. So what happens then? Who has access to data during the computation? Right? That poses a big challenge that the whole world of cybersecurity and privacy enthusiasts have been struggling with. There have been approaches with how do we do this on encrypted data, and this is becoming more and more possible. It's called homomorphic encryption. It's an incredible technology, but it's just really not that mature yet. The issue is that if you have large data sets, if you want to run some certain computational algorithms, it's just not capable of that, right? Mathematically speaking, it's just, at the moment impossible. We might discover how to do it, but we haven't yet. So because of that, it just removes a lot of use cases. So the other approach to this is, how do you make sure that multiple people can use data, but not everybody should be able to access to it, to see everybody else's data, right? So we all want to contribute to a research. I want to see the eventual outcome, but I shouldn't be able to see somebody else's data who's also contributing, right? There's like all this kind of mechanism. It's called federated learning is a common name, or like multi-party computation, secure multi-party computation. That also comes with its own challenges and a lot of security flaws as well if implemented incorrectly. So this is one of the areas that we innovated in and just recently introduced our framework that addresses a lot of the common challenges and issues with the federated learning approach, right? And that's what we call confidential federated learning. It's basically about how do you also make sure the data is encrypted, as compute, who has access to data. So it goes a lot more deeper. I don't want to bother you with all of those details, but it's about running computation in a federated manner, where federated manner is like a jargon of, I don't want to move all of the data to one place, right? Normally how our computers work, here's my hard disk, here's my CPU, right? You run the computation, they need to be next to each other. But if the data set, one is in Germany, one is in UK, one is in US, right? Are we going to all move it into one place? To whose place? The cost involved, the time involved, and the security. Like, you send the data away, you have no way of actually getting it back, right? You can maybe legally enforce it, but you won't be able to actually see that. The idea of federated learning is that you bring the computation to where the data is. You run the computation locally. You transfer the knowledge in a global place, and then you transfer the knowledge back to everybody else, right? So these are all these kind of cool mechanism that you can bring in to make sure that more and more layers are implemented to reduce the chance of something going wrong.
It sounds really, really interesting, super complex, but also like you're very kind of on top of things here, and interesting to kind of that you mentioned you give a glimpse into kind of potential new methods of kind of increasing this privacy, right, or improving security here. How do you? And a question really on like how you envision the future of this health data privacy, if we're to put it generally.
Well, so at the moment, of course, we are very much bullish on what we have developed ourselves, right? So the federated learning, but do it in a confidential manner. So in combination with confidential computing, we believe is going to be the future. There's a lot of sort of reasons for that, but to simplify it is that it's a scalable approach, right? So a lot of the current proposed solutions, have some form of limitation one way or another if you have to work with large data sets. But this one scales with large data, and this is something we have validated with top solutions architect at NVIDIA and Google, right? They are like, this is the future as well, and this is great. That like we've been working on it. They find us. They're like, oh, you're working on this too, right? And let's collaborate. And this shows that sort of, even though we're such a small team here, in the corner of the Netherlands, but we are up to something that also makes these large organizations with all the funding, with large research teams.
Exactly. Talk to us a little bit more about that. I'm interested in this collaboration. We mentioned, and I mentioned it in the intro as well. It's NVIDIA, there was Google, Erasmus Medical Center. You're collaborating with them. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's on like genomic research, right?
Indeed.
Talk to us a little bit about this collaboration. It's kind of and its potential impact on data privacy standards, basically.
Indeed. So, quick on the data itself. The data type, genomic data, is the most sensitive data that we can ever have, right? Because you only have one of it for your whole life, right? If it gets leaked once, there is no way of it being changed.
Give me that back.
So, besides that, this is your most sensitive data. It's also notoriously a tough data to work with because it's a large data by definition, right? It could be up to gigabytes, or maybe even more than a terabyte per person. And you have to run analysis on 100 patients, 1,000 patients,
exactly.
Right?
There's a lot of data. Yeah.
It poses a huge challenge on all sorts of level, right? Like at a physical level. We're going back to the first principles of how to address some of these issues. So we believe the future of medicine is precision medicine. Precision medicine means I need to not only look at your current symptoms when you are sick, I'm going to look at your DNA and other biomarkers about you to predict from a bunch of data about you what could go wrong in the future, right? So the more data sets and genetics plays an important role in that, right? So we know the future of medicine is precision medicine. It's going to genomic research is more and more necessary, but it poses all of these challenges. So when we went about addressing the privacy aspect of it, of health data, we chose DNA to begin with. And we're not alone in that. There are more large organizations who know this and are working on it too. There was a call from European Union on building secure private federated learning, right? They believe in that too. There were thousands of applications, and we were one of the applicants as well. We got selected. And we were awarded sort of the European award for the safe and secure AI, specifically in the field of healthcare. And that's sort of what we presented in UK a few weeks back. And as we were working on this project, we were using, among other technologies from NVIDIA and Google, that they sort of noticed that we are one of the first users of a technology that is in preview mode, in beta, so it's not public release yet.
Right.
And sort of they saw our use case and they were like, this is exactly how it should be used. So what we are doing right now to make it more concrete, it's about sort of biomarker discovery. Like, can we tell from your genetics that you have a chance of having Alzheimer, right, before it happens to you, and how can we prevent it? Because usually the earlier you detect it, there's a more chance that you can actually stop it or pause it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is about running a large genetic research on data from multiple locations. So among others from Erasmus Medical Center, but there's also Cardiff University who's interested in that, and a few other universities we are in talks with that want to collaborate on this together. And we are providing them the framework and the tooling to make sure that they can do this in a privacy-preserving manner.
It's really, really exciting. And I think, I mean, personally, I'm really excited as, to the potential and, leveraging data, AI, machine learning to enhance this, not just the privacy, but also the research that's going on here. I think I say personally because my father actually passed away from motor neurons disease, a fairly rare disease, right? ALS, it's known as in the US. And it's like, again, it's a kind of genetic makeup. So, okay, how exposed am I as kind of, his son to getting that disease? How likely am I to? And it's like you said, it's kind of early indicators could kind of, lead to, prevention. I don't know, but it's I think the kind of potential for these matters in a lot of different diseases as well. You mentioned Alzheimer's, whatever it might be. It's super, super exciting. But what's your 100%. View on the AI, the machine learning aspect here, and it's kind of how potent is the kind of potential here, the breakthroughs that you've maybe seen so far or that you expect to see in the future?
Definitely. So AI is going to play a crucial role in the future of medicine. So far we've worked with limited data sets and limited human hours to look at these large data sets. And the more we go forward, these data sets are becoming more and more complex. It's not, just your blood test. It's not just your heart rate. It's at your genetic level. It's at your epigenetic level, right? It's proteomics, transcriptomics, right? It goes a lot more deeper, and that's outside of even my expertise. That's where Sarah, my co-founder, can tell you a lot about it as a researcher. To make sense of all of this data, we just don't have enough human hours to spend, right? To find those patterns and similarities. And this is where AI plays a crucial role in sort of sifting through a lot of noise to find those important patterns for us. And then that's where the human gets involved and try to make sense of things. I believe with a lot of these models, like large language models, are becoming more and more capable of even human level understanding, working towards AGI. So I can even see that possibly happening. I'm not at the foundational model level to tell you how close we are into having AIs doing the job of the sort of the researchers, right? But it can clearly do a great job at data science, right? Clearly today, these AI models do way better than job than most data scientists, or at least it can help them. It can be a great assistant to them, right?
It kind of augments them significantly. Yeah.
So I think it's inevitable, right? It has to come to the healthcare, it has to come to life science research. But the question becomes, and I'm going to of course shamelessly plug OASYS Now. How do you get access to data compliantly, right? This is patient data that you need. We can streamline that for you, right? You can do it, ethically. You can do it legally. And you can make sure that you get access to large, diverse data sets. So that's where you have to go. Come to OASYS Now.
You heard it here.
Exactly.
But I think as I'm kind of, starting to wrap up a little bit here, I'd like to get your take on like your long-term vision for OASYS, and also, as you maybe start to scale the company, are there kind of specific healthcare markets or demographics that you're most interested in serving? What's your expectation? What's your hope moving forward?
Yeah, certainly. So we aim to grow our company on multiple fronts. One front is on the patient side. So we are going to more and more hire people that help us have a great interface and interaction with these people, right? It's about that community building. We believe in the long term, what matters most is building a relationship with these patients where you have their trust, right? That you provide the best services to them. And that's unfortunately what's been really lacking in the healthcare, right? The consumer tech in healthcare is really behind, right? There are a lot of great initiatives. There are a lot of great companies building consumer-facing app in healthcare. Don't get me wrong. But the challenge so far has been the healthcare itself, right? If you go back to the hospital level, we don't have great interface there, right? There is a lack of a proper infrastructure and user interface that is the great user experience, right? That's lacking, and that's sort of what we want to build. So it's both about thinking about what it means to the patients and the people who are helping the patients, right? That platform, let's call it an operating system for healthcare. You can build a lot of different apps and applications on it, but you need that ground level to be done correctly. So we're aiming to build that infrastructure that enables a lot more use cases, right? So we have only imagined so many of them. I'm sure there's somebody else maybe listening to this who has their own visions and dreams of what health tech product to build for patients or for other researchers. So we want to be able to be the enabling platform for them to be able to make that happen. So we both build products that are patient-facing, user-facing, etc. But what we really care about is about the infra level that can enable the future of healthcare and precision medicine research.
Really, really interesting. Very, very well put as well. I think I want to give a little bit of space for you if you want to add anything that I might not have kind of asked you about that you'd like to kind of mention before I do wrap up here.
Yeah, didn't think about that, but I mean, I think it's always good to say this. Right? We would love to hire the best talents that are mission driven. So if you have a personal reason why you want to be in the field of healthcare, if there is a vision and dream of the future you have, yeah, indeed, right? No matter what is your background, like contact us, right? If you're a tech, if you're an engineer, if you're a designer. Right? Don't matter what is your background. If your mission driven, if the mission of OASYS Now, making personalized medicine accessible and equitable globally, if that resonates with you, right, in one way or another, contact us. We would love to have. We would like to do this together with people, right? I'm only one person. We have a great team already right now, but to be able to achieve those future goals, we need to grow and do this with more people. So yeah,
super. Yep. You heard it here first as well, so get applying. But Nima, thanks so much for joining us. That I think brings us to the end of this episode. Really, really interesting. Really, nice to hear the kind of inspiring story behind OASYS Now, and how far you've come. The exciting collaboration with such big companies as well. And I think, it's really, really interesting to hear how you're transforming and democratizing that kind of healthcare data and patient care, essentially. So really well done. Really, really nice to talk to you. And we're excited to see kind of how OASYS now goes from here, basically.
Thanks, Lee. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Really nice to have you here. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out OASYS Now's website to learn more. That's OASYS Now. To learn more, and keep following us for more inspiring episodes and stories like this one. But until next time, keep innovating and keep building. We'll see you soon.